Howard Sullivan at his castle in Florida bumped into Brian.
We'll give it just another minute or two and just see.
Megan, Leslie, Kim, welcome.
Kim.
What?
All right.
Kim, I've never sat outside with you, I don't think, and I've been in a lot of Zooms with you.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Barbara. How are you?
Good
The
to see
weather
you.
today up our way has completely shifted. A wind came through yesterday and the
Go sit. Go sit.
humidity's gone, and hallelujah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to go ahead and get started, Cathy, and I'm going to get you to watch the door.
I'll do that. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on these bios, but I'll put them in again as each person is going or finishing up.
Rich, Catherine, it's good to see y'all here. Barbara. Okay. And everyone, welcome everyone to our 5th Virginia Voices with co-host Cathy Hailey, VP of the Northern Region of PSV, and myself, VP of the Western Region. As many of you know, Poetry Society of Virginia has launched its Centennial celebration, which will culminate in our annual statewide festival in May of 2023. The Centennial Committee settled on a theme for our year-long celebration, Virginia Voices, 100 Years and Beyond. Cathy and I started this series in order to get to know our members better by hearing their poetry, finding out what they enjoy about PSV, and what their hopes are for it as our community moves into its next century. On the second Wednesday of every month from May 2022 to May 2023, we will gather to ask our guests the same 3 questions. And those of you who have been here with me on with us on some of the other shows know that it's really been an adventure to find out what people are thinking and why people joined and what people want for PSV. And it's been an amazing feeling of belonging and connection. Some of the answers have been similar and some I hadn't thought of yet. So as we're inspired, challenged, and reminded of why we came together in a poetry community to begin with, we'll go on this journey. Bill Glose and Kathleen Decker have been generous enough to put recordings of the episodes on their PSV YouTube channels. So if you missed one and want to catch up on it or want to share one that resonated with you, then you can feel free to check out their YouTube channels. It's an easy way to share. I'll ask everybody to kind of keep themselves muted as we go through this, and I'll just cut down on any reverberation that someone might feel. Okay, this hour is going to go fast, so I'll stop talking and we'll get started. Cathy and I are welcoming today poets KaNikki Jakarta and Kathleen Decker. KaNikki is seen on NBC, WUSA 9, and Comcast. KaNikki Jakarta is the first African-American poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia, and poet in residence for Northern Virginia Fine Arts Association. She is the author of 3 novels, 2 poetry collections, a memoir, a short story poetry collection entitled Alabama Girl, Virginia Woman. Kathleen Decker is a physician, poet, and musician in Virginia. Kathleen Decker's poetry books include Russian Reverie, Whispers on Paper, Essence of Woman, and Updraft. She edited an international haiku journal, Chio's Corner, and served as an editor for the World Haiku Association. She has edited several anthologies, My Neighbor's Life, On Crimson Wings, and Quilted Poems. And her next book will be released in 2022, Merry Fishmas, The 12 Days of Christmas by the Sea. I do want to encourage you all to interact with each other and with our guests through chat. It's a really exciting way to see how others are experiencing it. So feel welcome to place your praise and thoughts there or use the reactions at the bottom of the screen. Let's start where PSV started, with a poem. Kathleen, VP of PSV's Eastern Region, will you please start us off? Kathleen, did we lose you? Oh, there you are.
I'm sorry, Angie, are you talking to me?
Yeah, I wanted to see if you'd start us off with the poem.
Okay, I will. The first poem I'm going to read is an early poem. I'm a retired psychiatrist, and this is a poem that was written in the 90s when I was doing a lot of psychotherapy, and it's called Healing the Spirit. And it's from my recent book, Updraft, which is a collection of poetry from about 3 decades. Healing the Spirit, peaceful cranes in white, wings spread in flight, over the soft chair for patience when there, their fears to expound, their fantasies to ground, my empathy to drain, soothing woe and strain. I see their spirits, released from some frets, waft to higher planes and keep company with cranes.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you so much.
That's it. I hope it came across.
It did come across. We heard you perfectly, and I could see you in a room and be with you through the experience. Especially my empathy to drain, and then when the spirits came. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I actually had a Japanese silk scarf that I framed, and so that was a true representation of my office.
Okay, I could see it. So Kathleen, I want to continue with you and start in with our questions. Would you please share your personal approach to poetry?
Okay. I started writing poems in high school, and I have to say that they were mostly sad, very existential, and dreadful. I continued writing and then began to write more in the 1990s, and I wrote a lot of haiku, tanka, renku, and even made a film involving 100 stanza sequence with 3 other poets that involved Japanese forms of haiku, and it was called a renku movie, and it was set to music, and it had dance and video as components. So then when I retired in 2018, I had a lot more time, and so I started writing more Western style poetry and participating in Poetry Society of Virginia, as well as the Williamsburg Poetry Guild. And I really enjoy free verse, but I do write some structured poems as well. I like to write about nature, but also about people. And PSV has allowed me to use some of my organizational talents to produce readings, workshops, and a variety of events in the Eastern region. And then what we did last year, which was pretty exciting, was we exhibited and made a book, which was called Quilted Poems. So this represents the work of 65 poets from the Poetry Society of Virginia and 38 quilters. So I've gotten to use a lot of parts of my brain.
Yeah, you have. Did you say 100 stanza poem?
Yeah. Yes. So the way that it's a Japanese form, and it's called renku. And so one poet writes a 3-line haiku. The next person links 2 lines and makes it into a tanka, but it involves a turn, and the Italian word is volt, and there's a Japanese word for cutting word. And so each of the 4 poets would write either 3 lines or 2 lines and start with the lines before it and link and turn to a new thought entirely. And we made that into a movie, which was really cool. It has koto music, Western music. I even played the violin during a classical sequence. And it really is, it's like somebody's completely nonlinear mind. But the Japanese like that kind of variety. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it seems like community has been a big part of your approach to poetry throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah. KaNikki, I'm ready. I'm ready to hear a poem. Get you to unmute.
She needs to unmute
I
herself.
realized I was
first.
muted. I was like, oh, I didn't know. Okay. I didn't know how we were doing this. If we were going back and forth, but got to stay ready. So all the time. This poem is called Young Flower. It is a response to Langston Hughes's poem called Young Prostitute. And I'll read his first, and then I'll read mine. Langston Hughes says, her dark brown face is like a withered flower on a broken stem. Those kind come cheap in Harlem. And this is my response, Young Flower. She bloomed much too soon for her intellect. She learned much too slow to gain self-respect. Plucked before she familiarized herself with her own roots and the foundation that she'd grown from. No one told her to stay rooted in the garden until she had learned to set herself apart. No one told her to guard her heart because she was beautiful and told often, like a flower in a garden of weeds. She was pleased with compliments, and it was evident that she was young, sprung from good genes, but no genius. But she was smart enough to know that she sat on a gold mine, and in hard times she'd worked at, but didn't know her self-worth. If she did, she'd know that it wasn't worth selling, not even for rents, not even for food, not even for compliments, not even for the power of being independent and alone. Her dark brown face in a state of bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly by herself. If only she didn't seek validation from someone else. If only she could perceive that she was untainted seed planted on good soil for germination, growth, reproduction, pollination. If only she'd make room in her headspace to validate her very existence. If only she could view her life stages as learning experiences. She was soft-spoken. She was unbroken, buried in her own darkness. If only someone would tell her, young lady, give yourself a new title because you're extremely entitled. Young lady, it may seem like you're buried in this darkness, but you were planted here, so your roots are here. All you have to do is bloom again.
All you have to do is bloom again. Thank you. So when I'm glad you read the Langston Hughes first, I want to say that I appreciate that. And I thought as a listener, how valuable that was for you to make sure I had that context. And I want to thank you for that. The empathy and tenderness that you're writing with when you're addressing, I think it's, I don't know, like I'm a listener and you're the poet, but to me, it felt like an archetype of young woman more than a specific young woman, and that there
a specific one.
It speaks to so many. And it was interesting to me that you have empathy in your poem, just as Kathleen had empathy come up in hers. And it was really beautiful and very powerful. Yeah, Christy, that last line. So KaNikki, so just so you know, what I am going to do is go back and forth. Okay. And so that we're in a conversation with each other. And so that's what I'll be doing. So I don't spring it on you every time. So what I want to hear now, though, is your personal approach to poetry.
I was cultivated in the womb by my mother to be a poet. My mother loved Nikki Giovanni poetry. She read a lot of it to me when she was pregnant with me. And she thought about naming me Nikki Giovanni as well. But then in the end, she decided to name me KaNikki instead, which is good because Nikki Giovanni is still around. So it would have been If I would have been Nikki Giovanni and Nikki Giovanni was Nikki Giovanni, would have been a little, little
Both in
confusing,
Virginia.
right? Yes, in Virginia, yes, it would have been a little confusing. So that's basically where poetry started with me. My dad was a Dr. Seuss lover. His name was Sam, and he used to always be quoting Dr. Seuss, saying, "I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam. I am." So when I was little, I got the Sam, the green eggs and ham book, and I thought to myself, my dad is Dr. Seuss. Who knew, right? I didn't really know. And then, so I got a lot of poetry from my dad, like Maya Angelou. He would be quoting her all the time. And I just liked the way that rhyming words were. Like, I really like Dr. Seuss, something, something blue, something, something Sue. I really, really liked the rhyming. So then when I was young and I started to learn words, I was always trying to rhyme something together, right? And then I went to a private Christian school when I was in elementary school, and they had poetry for a class. And I entered the poetry contest. So you would win in your classroom and then in the school, and then you would compete with other schools. So I started to win poetry contests all the way back in elementary. And it was a really stickler kind of thing. You had this big book that you chose poetry from. Then it was like 5 judges sitting in front of you, making sure you paused when you were supposed to pause, that you didn't miss any words, and reciting it. And then so one year when I lost, I was telling my dad I lost. And he said, the same girl read the same poem that you did. And he said, well, she read it better than you. So I said, well, next year I'll write my own poem. And that's how I started to write my own poem. So it would be like KaNikki Williams with an original piece, right? So it was already flattering that I would write my own poem. So way back then I started with poetry. And then I didn't take it for a class later on. I just continued with it. I wrote for college. I wrote poems for other people. And when you're young, your poetry is, I love him, he loves me. I don't like him, why he don't love me no more. This is the poetry that I wrote back in the day. And then when I was in my 20s, I saw the movie Love Jones. And Love Jones was a spoken word presentation. Darius Love Hall was standing up there with a djembe, and it was a djembe drum behind him, and he was standing on stage. And I said, where do they do that, right? So when I moved from Norfolk, I lived in Norfolk for 5 years before I moved to the DMV area, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. When I moved here, then I found out that they were having poetry at Bar None, and that's how I got started to reciting poems in public. And then people started to book me for features, and it started. That's how it started. Right. And now it's going really, really, really well now. So up to, Poet Laureate, and then getting the fellowship for the 2022 Academy of American Poets. And it's just, So my bigger approach to poetry is providing more platforms for poets so that they can do what I do. So I do a lot of workshops, and I host poetry shows, host poetry slams, so do things so that there's more of a platform. So, and I'm a pretty good host, I think, too. So hosting poetry and providing platforms is my bigger approach.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you're a good host. You emanate that, yeah, and that smile. So it's fascinating to me to hear both of you, when you talk about poetry, you're talking about poeting with others. Neither one of you really are like, well, me, and I, and this is, both of you were so much about, here's how I've worked with others. Here's what I want to offer to others. Like, it's beautiful. And then the empathy in both of your poems. And I think it's happening again, Cathy, that we have 2 guests that we had no idea had anything in common, and they're both playing off of each other like beautifully. I don't know if there's always a connection in poetry or if this just happens. Like I love it. And it's been a really special thing to experience here. And today it's happening again. So we'll move on to the next question, and I'll get Kathleen to answer it, and then I'll get KaNikki to answer it, and then we'll get to go into 2 more poems. So Kathleen, what prompted you to join PSV And how has PSV made a difference to you?
It keeps me extremely busy is the short answer to that question. Once I retired, I had more time and energy, and I wanted to not just write poetry in isolation, which you've just referred to, but to get critique from other people, to share poetry with other people. And so I put on my name there so I wouldn't forget to say it. I'm the current Eastern Region Vice President. And so I've hosted a number of readings. And Terry, who's with us tonight, Terry Cox Joseph, our current president, she and I did a workshop this last weekend. And I also arranged for our current poet laureate, Louisa Gloria, to come and do a workshop. So PSV's offered me the opportunity to contribute in a number of ways. And then Cathy will smile, I'm sure, and vociferously that she has chaired the student contest for the last 2 years, and I've chaired the adult contest. And since we had 1,400 submissions to the adult contest last year, and I shudder to think how many we have this year, keeps me busy. But really, it's a wonderful kind of busy. I love it, and it makes me feel very fulfilled to be able to work with other people. Want another poem now or later? You're
We'll
still
hear from-
muted.
We'll hear from KaNikki and then we'll come back to the poem.
Great.
Am I poeming or am I answering the question?
Answering the question about PSV.
Oh, I found out about PSV through one of the former poet laureates, Tim Siebels. I don't know what we were talking about, but then he said, you should join, you should join. So I said, okay. I didn't know what it was all about. And then I looked on the website, found out more information, joined, paid my membership fee. I mean, as a poet, and a poet in Virginia, you definitely want to be like a member of something that happens in Virginia, right? And then to find out about, I thought it would be a good source to find out about other poets who were in the state of Virginia, not just in Alexandria, Virginia. And just being able to network and share platforms on things that I was doing and seeing what else I can support. So that was the reason I joined.
Yeah, that's where I think I found out about you originally through PSV because of a workshop that you are offering. And so it is working. So KaNikki, since I've got you on right now, would you please read another poem for us?
Sure. Let me grab a book. I was like, I don't know what I'm reading, but I was like, oh yeah, KaNikki, you have a book. You can just look in the book and choose.
There you go.
So that's the good thing about having a book. Okay, so this poem is called Walking. When a toddler stands for the first time, an audience assembles, a cheering section emerges. Hope urges a first step. Hands reach towards her in case she needs help. We all know that she can do it. So we wait and we anticipate the steps she will take, the ones that will give her the cognizance and confidence to walk in her walk. And when she falls, she's met with applause, hands extended for assistance to help her stand again, encouraging her to begin again, because life is a walk. And we're all willing to talk her through it with a little bit of encouragement. But when an adult stands for the first time, an audience of naysayers assembles, awaiting a downfall, an assembly of onlookers, no hands extended, only fingers pointed in the wrong direction, no compassion, no affection, but life is a walk. And some people are afraid to get lost in the steps of the past. See, sometimes we have to make our own paths. Nothing leading the way but determination and hope, walking a tightrope of the unexpected, swallowing rejections like a horse pill, but you can't stand still. Not if you want to live, not if you want to make life for a living, not if you're willing to take a chance on yourself. Sometimes you have to encourage yourself. Sometimes there'll be no one there to help you but you. Sometimes you have to be your own cheerleader, your own leader, your own boss, whatever it costs. Sometimes you have to go broke to be enriched, to be whole, to mold yourself into yourself, and with God's help, anything, no, everything is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, KaNikki. I appreciate that. Again, I feel like you have this way of addressing many in your poems, and that turn that you made when an adult stands up, and then the poem went in a whole different direction, and it wasn't one I was expecting, and I feel grateful for that, and thank you. And encouraged. I feel very encouraged to stand up.
Because that's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Okay, Kathleen, will you read us a poem? I'm looking for you. There you are. Okay.
I'm here. So this is a poem from my collected poems, which was just published this year, called Updraft. It's called Updraft Poetry in 4 parts. And the 4 parts are nature is the first part, and then there's doctor and patience, and I already explained where that would come in, except patience is spelled with a CE. And then there are the COVID poems, which one of my beta readers said, oh my God, COVID's so depressing. But the whole point was they evolved from the more depressing COVID poems to the more happy, excited ones. And I think it's important to capture the age. And the 4th one is romance. And so this one, I think, is in my 4th one, romance, and you'll see why. It starts off with nature. It's called Almost. I almost pruned the butterfly bush after the butterfly savored its nectar, until birds came to feast upon blossoms gone to seed. I almost weeded the garden until I spotted a rare wildflower growing amidst weeds. I almost married the wrong man until I found one more suited. I almost followed my dream until a better one found me. I almost ended my life until raindrops brushed my face and I breathed again. So that's that one.
Wow, Kathleen. That there are so many of those lines, like, and this poem makes me want to write a poem after your poem. Yeah, I don't want to dismiss the power, particularly, in so many of the lines, but in that last line and how you left us and what you've shared in that last line and the way that felt. But this poem feels like a teacher to me. Like now I want to sit down and write an I almost poem. So thank you for that.
Sure. Yeah. It deliberately starts off with nature and very slow and sweet and then escalates. So that was intentional.
It's obvious. I think craft is almost always obvious, don't y'all? Like, yeah, that it. Something is intentional, and it's a skillful poet or a skillful linguist when you feel it in your body, and it's visceral, and it's oof, yeah, and that's how that was. Okay, we're moving on to our last question. Can we already be at our last question? Okay.
Already?
I know. Y'all might need to have an extra poem ready, but y'all got books, so y'all got lots of poems. We'll be fine. Okay. So I'll throw this at you first, Kathleen. As PSV, because you've had lots of time to think about this through lots of committee meetings. So you should have had an answer more than ready for this. As PSV traverses the next 100 years, what do you hope for the community somewhere on that timeline? Do you have ideas for events, projects, programs, activities, approaches that might support the diversity of poets in the Commonwealth? Is there something you'd like to lead or initiate on behalf of PSV? What do you want to see?
Okay, well, the short answer to that is I'm already working on all of those things. LaCroix Nixon, who's a young poet member of PSV and also an already established spoken word performance poet, and I are, he initiated this project and I offered to mentor him as an official Eastern Region project. We're going into local high schools to recruit young poets to do, whether it's traditional poetry or spoken word poetry or some of both. And half the time they don't even know what's what. They just, we're trying to get them comfortable with delivering their poetry in public. And so we're trying to foster both spoken word and traditional forms in high schools. It was very exciting. Terry, I think, is still here. Yeah. At our workshop, and of course it started with Louisa's workshop this last weekend, Gail Gewant, who had contacted me prior to the workshop, wondered if she asked kindly if she could bring some students from the governor's school. And I said, can you bring them? I'll pay you to bring them. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, she brought 6 kids who were from the governor's school, which if people don't realize, I'm in Williamsburg, the workshop was in Williamsburg. These kids come from 14 school districts around Appomattox, Virginia. So all the way from Richmond, all the way down to Williamsburg and Newport News. And then they bused them to the governor's school part of the week. And so they came to our workshop, and some of them came from 2-3 hours away. So that's the kind of thing that I want to continue to do, which is poetry, was oral and performance oriented back in the Greek and Roman times. And then we lost that for quite a few centuries. And so spoken word is not really new. Some of the rhyming is certainly, I would say, I hope KaNikki agrees, has an African influence with rap and spoken word that, the French and the Europeans, when they delivered their poetry, it was very flowery language and it did rhyme, but it didn't have a beat. It didn't have the same kind of rhythm that we've gotten since rap came around. Okay, so the last thing is, and I'm going to leave this as a teaser in terms of my projects. I've submitted a proposal to the Centennial Committee, and I hope it is looked upon with favor. And if not, I'll do it another way. But what it does in a nutshell is to combine voices from Virginia's past, and not just the traditional Edgar Allan Poe voice, but I specifically found a couple of people who are not white males and am bringing forth some of their historical poetry, and then using poets from our poetry society to bring their voices to some of the same kind of poems. So, but we'll see how that happens.
So, Kathleen, when in your vision, how do you connect? Like, how will you find poets to connect them, or like, will it be visual or auditory? Like, can you elaborate on that?
In which of my many projects?
The last one you're talking about that you submitted a proposal for.
Okay. So I don't really want to say, because the proposal hasn't been approved. And if the proposal doesn't get approved, then I'll do it as an Eastern Region project alone.
Okay.
All I'm going to say is that it takes the poems of some of the historical poets, 4 different historical poets, and then the modern poets are going to take those poems and add their voices to fragments of those poems. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. Fair enough. I need to work on my investigative reporter skills. And so then I get my whole answer. No, that's great. That's really exciting, Kathleen. I like that. Okay. I got a little distracted by all your ideas. So now I've got to refocus myself back on what we're doing. KaNikki, the next 100 years.
Well, first of all, I'm just going to help whatever Kathleen needs help with. I'm just going to help Kathleen. She got plenty of ideas. So like, just call me and I'll just, help you do whatever it is you're doing, number one. As for for right now, what I'll be offering definitely to all the members here, I'm going to be starting my initiative. I wrote a proposal for a how-to poet proposal, right? To talk about the business of poetry and how to be a professional poet, how that could be a source of income and be a job per se for you, right? Because everybody is always asking me, like, how do you publish a book? How do you book shows? How much do you charge for shows? What do you put on artist resumes? Can you claim this? What can you claim on your taxes and things and such? So that's the beginning of something that I will be offering. Definitely, proposing it as coming in for classes virtually or in person if you want to drive to Alexandria, or in person, and then like proposing it and letting the younger people know, starting with the youth from ages 16 to 24. Some people, because once you learn these things, then you teach these things, right? So then you go back to the youth and you teach them, of course, like how to perform poetry, and like Kathleen said, how to be able to speak in public and not be, if something happens when you stand up, I don't know, like when you're sitting down, it's fine. Like, you're in a class and the teacher calls your name and you're sitting down and they say, stand up and answer. Something happens. I don't know. It's like, some jitter or something happens. I'm standing up and everybody else is sitting down, like talking about public speaking and why that is such, it's a powerful thing if you can stand up in front of people and feel comfortable with that. So definitely teaching that as well. What I would like to see, definitely more of this. We have been fortunate. One thing that COVID has given us is Zoom, right? We had Zoom, but now we've met so many people over this time, bringing people together. Kathleen's in Williamsburg, I'm in Alexandria, different regions of people, more people in people in Virginia that you can see now and connect with, right? I got friends that I was like, we never met in person. It's just been on Zoom. Who knew it was just online? So I definitely want to see that. And maybe, 100 years, we might be holograms and we'll be in the front of the people. We don't know what might happen with virtual. So definitely would like to see more virtual things and bringing people together, and maybe some type of conference would be nice soon. Some type of conference for us would be nice, so we can meet an in-person conference, something that we can offer for a weekend or a week. So I would definitely like to see that.
Yeah, I would like that too. And that kind of segues me to KaNikki, have you submitted a proposal for the Centennial? Because I think you.
I have not.
Oh, well, okay. Everyone, this is a good time to mention this, that this is one of the first times, as far as I know, that PSV has done this. They are doing a call for proposals for the Centennial Festival, and it's open. I think the call is open to October 1st or October 3rd. You'll submit through Submittable. So everyone here today, I'm talking to everyone. This is your chance to put something together and be heard. It can be a group of you. It can be one of you. And it's like KaNikki said, once you learn these things, then you teach these things. So what is it time for you to teach? What is it time for you to stand up and teach? And
yes, where's that link? Where's that link? Who's going to post it?
Yeah, KaNikki, the link is direct. There's a direct link on our website, and there's also a direct link in the newsletter. So you just go into the PSV website and you can click on the link to submit through Submittable.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
We might be able to get Cathy to find the link and put it in the chat for us. So we'll be together for a little bit longer, and Cathy's working on that for us. Thank you, Kathleen. I appreciate it. Now it's poem time again. I'm not sure what my favorite thing is. Hearing what everyone is thinking about and working on and dreaming of, or hearing the poems. I love them both. I'm so glad we're doing this. And I just want to second what you said too. Like, Zoom is the best thing to come out of COVID. And you're right. I just met a girlfriend the other day, and it's the first time we'd ever seen each other in person, but I didn't even realize it. Like, I was going to see her, and I hadn't even processed that I've never seen her before, just because our connection has gotten so deep. And honestly, I think all of my Zoom connections center around poetry. So poetry and COVID had a very special relationship together. Kathy's got it.
2 things real quick. I put the link in and also wanted to remind you that you and I have not met in person yet, but we're really close friends.
I know. I love Cathy, and I feel like we're dear friends. I mean, you're someone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I text you when I'm in the grocery store. Like, that's a close friend, you know? Yeah. That's right. We've never met. Okay.
Came close.
Poems. Kathleen, I'm going to have you read a poem, and then KaNikki, I'm going to have you read a poem, and we'll see where we are on time.
Okay, so I debated because I have a lovely nature poem in case, but the thing is that I have a funny one that I want to read first. It's how you can have fun with the pandemic. So I'm going to read this one. It's short. It's called The Church Mice. The church mice, lacking as they do higher reasoning, appear confused, scurrying about under empty pews, sniffing, scritching, and scratching at the altar's edge. If they could talk, they'd say thank you. The church is at last quiet, free from human babble and loud off-key singers, neither thunder and damnation nor joyful noise. But where are those sacred crumbs? Fragments of blessed wafer. Truth be told, mice love wafers and adore gluten. The homeless are being fed by Grubhub and Kroger, while the church mice starve. Tiny COVID casualties. That's it.
Thank you, Kathleen. KaNikki?
Okay, I am going to read a haiku and then a short love poem because we gotta end on love. Always gotta end on love. So my haiku is entitled Together Separately. I gave you my all, realized I needed myself, left you with yourself. Haiku. The poem is entitled That Kind of Love, Me and You, just in time to fall in love again with you. Long title. The poem is not just about as long as the title. I said my heart beat for you, called you home because that's where the heart is. Put you first on my things to do list, couldn't resist the smile of your good mornings. Looked at your reflection behind me in my own mirror, ignored my needs to put you first. That was a privilege. Love gave me wisdom. I had a revelation. We have to switch places. Where I have you, strike through. Now includes me. Didn't have a clue what loving myself first meant. That was evident. But I've learned that it's not equivalent to fairness. Let's play fair. Let us not cheat ourselves of the love we had before we united. That's such an injustice. Truth is, it's not just us. And we have so much love to give. Let us love ourselves with passion, with urgency, with our love will forever be at the top of my to-do list because I could never resist sharing the love that I have for myself with you.
Yes. And that love will always be at the top of the to-do list. I love that.
You gotta love yourself.
So we have a little time left, and I think I would like to ask you a craft question. And I think I'd really like to ask the same craft question of you both, because it's something I see you both doing. And you both have the ability to take something like Kathleen, like you just did with COVID, but you've done it with all your poems today, okay? And you take this thing that is sad, you know, KaNikki, it's been in your poems. Like, you take this thing that we could look at from this side with this lens, and it would be riddled with sadness. And that's all that the poem would be. But you both have a way of transforming it into something that becomes, the last poem was funny, but sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it's uplifting. Sometimes it's hopeful. And I just wanted to see, to talk for a couple of minutes about how you do that? Whoever wants to go first, since I didn't prepare you at all.
All right, I unmuted faster, KaNikki. Angie, I was at first trying to think what my response to that would be. And I think some of it comes from being a psychiatrist. When you're a therapist, you always do what we call positive reframing. So a patient will come in with a disaster, divorce, death, lost job. And a lot of what we do is try and help them see it, here's the frame, and we try and shift the frame so that they can see some of those events. Not necessarily, it's kind of hard to make COVID funny, but I did try in that one. But certainly with respect to divorce, there are positive aspects to such a terrible event. If you really try. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is more of an emotional response from me too, which is, like I said in the very beginning of today, I wrote, existential angst, unhappy poetry when I was a teenager, because that's kind of where most teenagers are. And I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not that person. I'm happy most of the time now. So I try consciously to bring some lighter elements.
I do the same thing. Even if I'm going to write, and during my poetry sets, even if I have something that's sad, I always lead with love and end with love, always. So that even if I have to bring you down in poetry, I always bring you back up in the end. And that's what we always all want to be, right? We all want to be up. We all want to be happy. I know I was doing an interview one time and somebody asked me, what did you want to be when you grew up, right? And I said, I don't know, but I know what I want to be now. And they said, what? And I said, happy. That's what I want to be.
Absolutely. That's right. And and I did want to say one thing, that while you both do a positive reframing, the poetic positive reframing, or you bring the love out in it, you also are both truthful about what it is, if that makes sense. So you do not turn away. You do not turn away from the truth, but you do turn it up to love and to hope. And so I really appreciate that about both of your work. And we have time for one more poem from each one of you. Kathleen unmuted first again. Kathleen,
sorry, KaNikki. Many Zoom meetings. Okay, so this is partly due to Luisa Agloria, and she has a social climate change agenda going on and an anthology coming up. And actually, it got me to thinking, and then I kept getting these feeds on my internet about monarchs. So one sentence of background: monarchs are now an endangered species for a number of reasons. And I will say that the two biggest ones are deforestation and replanting fields with condos. So here's my poem. It's called Monarchs. Most prevalent of butterflies, all American, north and central, so regal and strong, its coloration imitated by lesser butterflies, painted ladies, peacocks, viceroys, and queens. Throngs of migrating monarchs cover acres of Mexican jungle with gold, rust, and black flutters in winter. Endangered, milkweed replaced with urban condos, winter with warming. I dream of planting milkweed among butterfly bushes, sowing milkweed in county parks, meadows, and the yards of the urban condos until monarchs reign again. Thank you. And I forgot to say, I meant to say this in the very beginning. Thank you so much, Cathy and Angie, for putting all this energy into organizing this. It's just wonderful, and it's a wonderful opportunity for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen, for dreaming of monarchs reigning again. I think Cathy and I get more out of this than anyone else does, maybe. It's because we joined for the same reason y'all did, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Yeah. KaNikki, take us home.
Okay, hopefully I can invite you guys to something too when this ends. I can invite you to something. But this piece is called Mirror Talk. See something nice. See something beautiful. Don't see things that needs improving. Notice the good things first. See your self-worth. Tell yourself you're priceless. Don't sell me short. Don't sell me at all. Remember that I don't have to stay down even when I fall. Put me first. See what God meant for good. Explain myself again when I'm misunderstood. See my dreams become a reality. See it with anticipation. Make these words a manifestation. Love yourself. Do it today. Say what you mean what you say. Be a good person. Be a good friend. Even if you failed at these tasks, live tomorrow to try again. Don't be ashamed to laugh aloud. Don't be ashamed to cry. Remember, nothing beats a failure, but a person willing to try. Remember that even in the darkness, that you already know the way. Don't wait for tomorrow. Do it today. Remember to not be selfish, but do something for yourself. Put your needs ahead of everyone else. Now, this may sound selfish, but remember this to be true. You can't do anything for anyone if there is no more you. Mirror Talk.
Thank you, KaNikki. Thank you, KaNikki. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you to everyone who took the time to be here today. Thank you to Cathy for always being here to do these things with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope we'll see y'all.
All right.
Go ahead, Cathy.
Applause for our guests and Angie, everybody. Angie, if you'd like to stop the Zoom, we can applaud. Or stop the recording.